I'm live. All right, so my name is Elias Reese, and I'm just gonna make like a layman's log here. I just made a playlist on YouTube called From Layman to Lawyer, and it's basically gonna be just some videos of my journey through the legal process here. And to start off, if it's not already readily apparent, because I've already put a live stream video out there. But anyway, I'll start from the beginning. First of all, I have always had a very inquisitive type of personality. Um, I thought I would have been a good investigator because I like to dig in and find out the facts of things. So, this is also why I teach science. So, I'm a science teacher as well. And now I just recently joined a law school, Purdue Global Law, and I'm starting courses here in about 2 weeks. So, how did all of this come about? Well, again, like I said, I've always had an interest in the law, and I looked at going to a law school probably about, I don't remember exactly when it was, probably about from 5 to 8 years ago, something like that. And, I thought it'd be interesting, be fun to do. I was already, however, at the time I was busy. I had my own business as well. I have a patent for a raft that I build, or used to build, got too busy. Uh, I don't build those rafts right now. That has to do with some of the legal stuff that I'm going through at this time. But I could tell you about that here in this video if you'd like. Anyhow, I was interested in law, but something really pushed me into taking courses. So here's that story today. First of all, this started off at my employment. I am a public school teacher. I teach science, and in 2019, I was well, our school district had just adopted a new science curriculum, and it happens to be a very online platform, which was awesome because, we all know in 2020, for our district, I believe it was March of 2020, our students went to 100% distance learning. And for me, Amplify Science was a great backbone for that platform to be used digitally. So that was awesome in that regard. But then there were some odd policies that started to kick in from the government in 2021. So in California, where I teach, Thomas J. Argonne, the California Department of Public Health director, created a policy where school workers had to be tested weekly for screening for active infections of COVID-19. And school workers who gave up their medical privacy rights and stated that they were vaccinated and could show proof that they were fully vaccinated, which means not only did they receive 1 to 2 doses of the mRNA or other vaccinations for COVID-19, but they were not literally considered fully vaccinated until 2 weeks after they were vaccinated. Well, why is that significant? Well, after you get vaccinated, you do what is called seroconversion. Your body receives that pathogen, and your immune system recognizes that that's a foreign invader, and your body's immune system kicks in to build antibodies to those pathogens, which basically kill off the pathogen, or you know neutralize it so that you don't get sick, or your sickness is not as bad, and therefore your survival rate is much higher. And again, that's what we basically consider immunity. Now your body has an immune response to that invader, and it fights it off. Okay, well, again, I'm a science teacher. I used to be in the Navy, so I was a medic. I was a hospital corpsman for the Navy, and I worked at a hospital for 5 years prior to ever teaching as well, so in the private sector. So now I'm looking at this policy like this policy makes absolutely no sense. I have to be forced to test for COVID infection weekly because I exercise my right to medical privacy by not divulging my vaccination status to the government. And however, out of curiosity, because again, I like to know what's going on, I went and got my COVID. went and checked to see if I had SARS-CoV-2 spike protein antibodies. So there was an antibody test that could be done. They draw your blood, and it just shows if you have antibodies to the virus, which means you have seroconverted, or at least that you are taking monoclonal antibodies, and therefore you have the antibodies to fight off an infection. So regardless, that test shows again. And by the way, it would show the three things, either one or more of these three things occurred. One, that you got vaccinated and seroconverted. Two, that you were naturally infected and seroconverted. Or three, you have passive immunity because of the monoclonal antibodies. So all three of those conditions would point to, would show that you have SARS-CoV-2 antibodies. However, again, at work, you only are excused from this mandatory test if you showed proof of vaccination. So already that's a little wonky, right? It's not Something's not right there. And uh, to get into the law a little bit about being vaccinated is not what they call a protected class. So you can be discriminated against in the workplace for characteristics that are not protected. So let's say you have red hair and your job wants to fire you because you have red hair. Well, that's not a protected class. Literally, they can fire you for being a redhead. I know it sounds ridiculous, but that's the truth of the matter. So, again, you can't just say, "Well, now I'm being treated differently at work because I'm unvaccinated." Now, unless that affects protected classes. So here's how my argument has been since the beginning that look, the Americans with Disability Act says that I may not be discriminated against and experience adverse work conditions if I am regarded as disabled. Well, how does the Americans with Disability Act define disabled? Here's the third prong of the Americans with Disability Act. If you are believed to have, no matter how minor, a limitation of any bodily system, including your immune system, and if you are believed to have a impairment for more than 6 months or 6 months or more, again, no matter how minor that impairment, and you experience adverse work conditions, then adverse actions at work, then you've been unlawfully discriminated against due to disability. So that's exactly what I've alleged. For 6 months or more, I was regarded as having a limited immune system. Despite the fact that I showed proof of antibodies to the virus, for some reason that did not count. That didn't count. I had to show that I was vaccinated with a man-made product, and they had to know that it was the man-made product that did this. Not they wanted to ignore the objective medical evidence that I could show them, and they just wanted to go for some arbitrary um, criteria when literally three different forms of immunity would have satisfied their need for information to determine whether or not I was a direct threat in the workplace. So really, that's all they need to know. Does any person at the job have SARS-CoV-2 antibodies, regardless of how you got those antibodies? And the reason they try to push it that route is because of Jacobson versus Massachusetts, a 1905 law case. Let's say lawsuit, but uh, court case where the Supreme Court ruled that yeah, you can make people get vaccinated for the betterment, the good of more people. Basically, if you can protect the health of the community, because if these people get vaccinated, then you override the person's individual rights for the collective whole, for the rights or for the benefit of the collective whole. Well, that's not really the case here, because the policy that I'm talking about didn't come out until August 11th is when it was announced, and August 12th it went into effect, and schools had to be in compliance by October 15th of 2021. And the odd thing about that is on July 30th, I believe, maybe as early as the 29th, the director of the CDC, Rochelle Walensky, had already stated that the vaccinations could not prevent infection or transmission, especially in light of the Delta variant. And therefore, that whole policy, which he based, when I say he, Thomas Yargon, based on the Delta variant, just didn't, doesn't even pass rational basis review. For another good reason it doesn't pass rational basis review is because none of the students on campus needed to be tested for COVID either. So if there are 15,000 students on our campus and only a handful of teachers, maybe 400 max out of 1,500, I say teachers, but I meant school workers, 1,500 school workers, 15,000 students or so, um, and then you're forcing about 400 max, 2 to 400 people to go get tested weekly for an active infection of COVID, and that is somehow supposed to stop the threat of the virus spreading, and or it doesn't make any sense. Uh, so anyway, I had classes full of kids that were sick, wearing masks inefficiently, where you could literally see their mouth because the mask is too large, or they wear it down below their nose, or yet I have to get tested every week under the threat of being disciplined or fired and losing my job, my property right, and my interest to being continuously employed as a public employee for a salary that I had been earning in the public sector for nearly 15 years. Fortunately, I was not fired. Um, but the stress that it caused was an undue stress, again, for a policy that I believe is completely um, arbitrary and capricious. Matter of fact, it doesn't even pass the muster of substantive and procedural due process because it wasn't based on any uh, relevant facts, that whole policy. Anyway, that motivated me to really dive in to looking at my contract, looking at the laws that were governing the work employment situation at the time, and just looking up laws straight off the internet from California legal legislature's information website, among other websites. And I was blowing the whistle as loud as I could. This is employment discrimination. This is discriminatory, the policy that you have. This is an improper governmental activity because it's incompetent, ineffective, or inefficient. And nobody wanted to admit it. Nobody would acknowledge it. And it was brushed under the rug by every single agency that I could get a hold of. Because this thing, I really do believe this whole thing was mostly just politically driven for who knows what reasons, but it wasn't for legitimate medical reasons, that's for sure. So anyway, I had to push through everything myself. The grievance process through the collective bargaining agreement at my work, um, notifying authorities, filing government claims against the employer so that they could be notified that they were going to be sued. And then finally, the lawsuit, which I had to go ahead and write myself because finding an attorney to fight the government is difficult. And the EEOC was not doing its job. And again, I think that has to do with political reasons. So I ended up writing my own complaint and submitting that to the federal court here in California to get my day in court, my unbiased, hopefully, fact finders and the unbiased um, decision makers of the law, which in this case would be a federal judge. Okay, so that's kind of the foundation. That's what got me to dive deeper into the law with, and again, I've already had an interest in the law, and I am interested in fine details and knowing how things work. And this is why, again, I'm a science teacher. This is why I enjoy learning about science and nature and all the complexities of how things work. So delving into the law is very similar to that because it's very complicated, convoluted, and it's like a spider web where you touch one part of the web and it affects another part of the web. And that's literally how the laws are written. Case law affects legislation. It's an ugly web with all kinds of ins and outs and caveats, and it's very complicated. But that's what makes it interesting too. So anyhow, um, let me steer the ship back in the right direction. Um, I forget where I was going with that. Well, again, I was trying to give you the background story. What has led me to this point? How did I get here? And what have I been doing to learn as much as I possibly can, as quickly as I can? So again, just delving into the internet right off the bat, reading the reading whatever contracts were in front of me at the time, and laws, and whatever legal paperwork I was given for the testing, just everything, just reading everything, analyzing everything. So what did that lead to? Well, it led to my unsatisfactory knowledge of the law, which was what I would call, um, what do they call that? Philosophy, kind of like philosophy, where you are in this position and you feel that, something's not right here. I have a question still that are unanswered. So in philosophy, you analyze situations and you realize there's a contradiction, or it's that uneasy feeling where like don't know enough here, or there's not enough information, or this is an odd circumstance, and you realize through metacognition that this is an odd circumstance and I don't know enough about that. So what am I going to do to resolve that? So I just dove straight into legal information and just started to devour as much as I could. And one of the first things I jumped into was a course called Jurisdictionary. That's its registered trademark, also known as How to Win in Court. And you basically subscribe to it. You have, I believe, a 1 year subscription, and it just goes straight into like how do you write a complaint, or just it just gives you lots of information right off the bat, pleadings, discovery. Like it's a no wasted time whatsoever. You want to learn about how to write a lawsuit, or what you should do to, you know, jurisdictional allegations, a lot of just the basics, right? Just straight to it. Boom. So and which is great. I'm glad I found that one right off the bat because I needed that to write my complaint and submit that to the federal courts. So that was a huge benefit. Matter of fact, in the description of this video, there's a link down there if you're interested in working as a pro se litigant, meaning you're working for yourself. You don't have an attorney. You want to enforce your rights because no one else is going to help you, and you want to do it. Then that's the course I highly recommend taking. So on top of that, I also was just trying to get a hold of as many books as possible that I could listen to because I'm a busy person. Again, I work full time. I'm a school teacher. Um, and my drive to work is about a 20-minute drive. That's 40 minutes a day that I could listen to something. And so I started to delve into audiobooks from Audible, and I just went back right now and looked at all the books that I've purchased and listened to more than once now. There's a compilation of 19 books that I've already purchased and listened to, and several of them I've listened to multiple times. Um, that list is also in the description, but I'll just rattle a few off the top of my head that I can remember. So, like constitutional, or what is it, law for dummies, or something like constitutional law for dummies, legal 101, civil rules of procedure, civil rules of evidence, um, civil rights, know your rights, bill of rights. I don't know. There's a good 20 or so books in there, about 20 books in there that I've listened to, and I listen to them daily, as you know. 20 minutes to work, 20 minutes back, or I'll come home, walk around my house. I have a paved walkway that I built, and I'll just walk and listen and walk and listen and re-listen to it back up. I mean, I'll I'll write notes if I need to. If I catch a law in there that applies to my situation, I'll jump in and research it further on the internet as well. So it's a very good foundation setter because it just gets you up to speed with the legal system. What are some of the case laws out there that apply to the law or to, possibly your situation? And it's just a huge overview of information that points to some specifics, and those specifics can be researched in more depth on the internet as well. So it's been a great learning experience for me. About a year and a half or so I've been doing that. I should, if I guessed, it was about a year and a half. I didn't really jump into the legal side of everything as far as how to write my own complaints and do that because I was just so caught up in just researching the laws themselves and reading my contracts. So for, I don't know, better part of a year, that's all I was doing. Then I started to jump into all the more formal legal information and education. And now my lawsuit is still in the federal court system. I have retained an attorney since, just to reduce my workload as far as doing my own pleadings and getting ready to go to court. And when I say court, trial, I mean trial. And so I've got a little bit more free time, which is great. That's again, so like I said earlier in this video, that's one of the reasons I stopped working at my company. I was producing hand making rafts and selling them to the public all over the country. And with all this legal mess, I just got way too busy to do any of that stuff and had to drop it. So, because again, fighting for my rights and fighting for the rights of others is just more important to me than getting my product all over the country and selling that to prospective customers who enjoy, fishing as much as I do. Plus, again, I was in the military, was a hospital corpsman in the Navy. I did swear an oath to uphold the Constitution, and when I see something that I believe is incorrect, improper, or wrong, I generally try to correct that. And in this case, it directly affects me, along with other silly laws that I think have come out in California that have affected me personally. Um, for example, like lead-free ammo. That was, that's been being pushed for years, and it's 100% lead-free ammo for hunting now. Although you can target practice all you want with as much lead as you want all day long, and you can still go fishing with lead weights, any river, any waterway, anywhere you want. That you can legally go fishing. So to restrict my ability to shoot, an animal, which is a few times per year, if it's deer, if that, I've shot 6 deer in California. That's not a lot of lead being spewed out into the wildlife, into the wilderness. And some of the places I hunt are near mines with the radioactive elements. So it's kind of interesting that they can restrict your ammunition, yet you can go hunt right next to a radioactive mine. Go figure. The other thing too is I had a bobcat permit out here in California, and I purchased that, totally legal to hunt bobcats. And right in the middle of me having a bobcat tag, that also gets revoked, and I can no longer use it, and there's no refund. So I don't know. California has not been great to me as far as laws, and a lot of times I don't think the laws are based on good factual grounds and why they do what they do. So I was already rubbed wrong a couple times by California, I think, and then this was the icing on the cake. You're going after my job, and this is the policy that went into effect was statewide. If you were a school worker in California in the public or private sector, and you were not divulging your vaccination status, yet you had immunity to SARS-CoV-2, then you could not work without getting tested every single week for an active infection of COVID when the students did not have to, and nor did people uh, who chose to give up their right to medical privacy. So Yeah, that was just the straw that broke the camel's back. Um, the thing is, too, at if I lost my job at this school, I could not have worked in any other school in this state. That policy was in effect for, I believe, 13 months. 13 months. And there was a similar policy to that one in Los Angeles Unified School District. However, that one was literally a vaccination mandate. I don't see how the one I'm talking about either isn't necessarily a vaccine mandate, because that's what they wanted to know. Were you vaccinated? If not, then here's what you have. Here's your consequences. Um, you have to test every single week. Um, LA Unified, instead of testing weekly, you were just fired. So I would argue that they're both vaccination um, mandates to some degree. Just some had worse consequences than other. Anyway, in the LA Unified School District, 500 school employees were fired, and a lot of those school workers are not back to work still. So that could have been me. That could have been me. I could have been fired at my job, and I could still not be teaching right now. Um, Now, some of these policies were rescinded, including the one here at my school district. Um, but the teachers that lost their job in LA, they're still not working. Um, so I didn't know how this was going to affect my life, and I have two children and a wife and a mortgage and bills to pay. I mean, that's my chosen profession. Um, so to lose that would have been detrimental, massively detrimental to my welfare, my family's welfare, whatever benefits I have from employment, any types of insurance, medical insurance, retirement, I mean, the whole nine yards, just because they wouldn't look at objective medical evidence to realize that I'm not a direct threat in the workplace and demand that of, the only exclusion to this testing policy is to show that you got this man made product. And regardless of how your immune system works, or regardless of the fact that you have SARS-CoV-2 antibodies already, doesn't matter to us. We're going to ignore the provisions in the Americans with Disability Act, and we're just going to come up with our own arbitrary and capricious criteria, and we're going to put pressure on you to go get our medical treatment of choice. No thanks. Uh, Follow the laws, please. There's federal rules and laws that you have to follow that trump your silly state policies that you created. Anyway, that pushed me into going even further into the law because, like I said, I just started doing a bunch of research just into my contract, into laws on the internet, and that led me into purchasing things like Jurisdictionary and many books as I could get from Audible. And then, now I've retained an attorney to take over my case, and that's helping to free up some of my time. And now I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to enroll in law school. Might as well get credit for everything I've been researching for these last couple years. So I found Concord Law, which was out here in California, based in California, Concord, California, I believe. I believe. I could be wrong where their actual home base was at. But anyway, Concord Law has been purchased by Purdue Global University, which it still has all the credentialed, or, accredited, uh, same accreditation process, I believe. So they're accredited through, I can't remember where they're accredited through, but taking their courses online, you can get the executive Juris Doctorate or a regular Juris Doctorate. And so one of them is basically a 3-year program, one's a 4-year program. The 4-year program leads to the California bar exam, so that if you pass that test, then you can become an attorney here in California, practice in California. And and if you even if you do get your Juris Doctorate and say you don't pass the bar exam for California, I believe you can also still practice in all 50 states, because of the federal laws that exist that cover the whole. country, like bankruptcy law or intellectual property rights and things like that. So, or civil cases such as the one I have currently in federal court. So, substance. What do they call those? Federal question jurisdiction or diversity jurisdiction, things like that can be heard in federal courts. So I am not 100% sure what I want to do with my legal education, but I do know it has been highly useful in helping me to, kind of hold the government accountable. I mean, we the people are supposed to be in charge of the government, technically, right? We vote for representatives who supposedly uh, make laws based on our input as constituents, and then like board members from the school, they basically tell the school how the school should be run, and they are elected. So, it's supposed to be the people running the government. And when the government steps out of line, then the people need to do something about it. And that's kind of where I fall at this moment in time. And it's also led me to see other areas and different school districts that have led to some situations that are odd, where I've had to step in and say something about those situations as well. Because again, I'm not the only person who works in a school, so does my wife. So I've stepped in there and also made mention of some stuff in her district as well, because of the things that have transpired there as well. And again, this is where I'm at right now. I start classes here in about 2.5 weeks or so. Actually, about 2 weeks from now, I start classes. First class I'm taking, because the classes I signed up for have no prerequisites, but I did have to show transcripts and get admitted to the law school first. So I did get it. I did get admitted. Or approved. My application was approved. I was admitted. I just registered yesterday or 2 days ago, and I start up here real soon. That first class is employment discrimination. I had three classes that I really wanted to take. That happened to be one of them. If I could go back and change it, but timelines were so short. There was two other classes that I was looking at. Evidence was one of them, and research, online research, how to find cases, relevant cases, and things like that. Anyhow, uh, let the journey begin. Might as well get credit for what I've already been doing for the last couple years. These credits also apply towards salary advancement at my job. So I have enough years in service there, and just enough credits just to start going down that list of getting into a higher salary range. When I say down, I mean the numbers get higher as you go down this list. So I can earn more money. Might as well get credit for the courses I was already informally learning about. And you know, I would like to get my Juris Doctorate at some point. It's just a matter of time at this time, with the lawsuit I currently have going, and the fact that I could earn more money if I get these credits would also help pay for the law school. And you know, I don't necessarily have plans to get out of education, but I already use a lot of the information that I've learned at work. Bring up stuff to my union when I see stuff now. Um, my my students, even when I hear a student say a comment or do something and I know that's illegal, I'll explain it to my students. Hey, that's illegal. That breaks a federal law for this, that, or whatever reason. You need to stop doing that. I've also informed my students of their educational rights, gave them a form to complain if someone is bullying them, if someone is taking away their right to a free education here in California, or any benefits of the educational system that we provide, like instruction in the classroom. If somebody's in there interrupting or interfering or intimidating them, and preventing them from receiving a quality education, then that's against the law. And those students who are doing those disruptive behaviors need to be disciplined for those for their deprivation of rights from the other students by interfering with their right to a free, safe, secure, and peaceful education. So, the law really opens up your eyes because everything is controlled by the laws that exist. And, you start to see stuff when you see facts happening in front of you. Those fact patterns match up with the laws. And, if you have the essential elements of a cause of action, then, something needs to be done about that situation. And that's where I find myself diving deep into the law here now and advocating for justice and doing what's right according to the laws. I'm not just trying to, nitpick the district or anything like that. I really, I just want to know my rights. If I have to enforce them, I will. I'm not out there looking for, uh, I'm not looking for wrongdoers. But if something is being done wrong and it's affecting me or someone I know, and then I'm just gonna have to step in and do something about it because somebody has to make sure that the laws are being followed and that rights are not being deprived. And if we want that system to change, then you have to be actively participating in it as far as voting or on the legislation or sorry, the litigation side of it. Because if you win court cases, those become common law as well. So anyhow, it's complicated. Some of this stuff might go over my audience's head because I don't know where you're at in your legal education, but this is where I'm at in mine. Again, if you would like to see what I've already dove into and learned and at least created a foundation for myself to build on, those are in the descriptions of this video. If you have any questions, feel free to just type a message here. I'll respond best I can if I'm not too busy, which I'm sure I'll be pretty busy now going into law school. But that's my current situation. I thought I'd share that with you, and I'll keep you guys posted on how things are going, not only with my court case, but with my progress through law school. Take care. Have a good one, guys. Talk to you soon.